Hello, we're continuing to go through our intentional parenting, and this is chapter three, being a grown-up parent. And this one's written by Melissa. And so she starts with kind of this challenge of being a grown-up parent and kind of giving some descriptions of parenting styles and how she kind of defines it and how she sees it. But she starts with this great quote, and she says this. She said, "Rather than speaking like a grown-up, you speak like a 10 or 15-year-old. You go back, the situation triggers an emotion, and it takes you back to a certain place in time, a time which you have perhaps gotten stuck." And so that's what I see often, kind of within parenting and kind of even within my own life of whenever I kind of go into this immature, kind of notion. It's because of a place where I got stuck in adolescence or in my teenage years. And so it's moving that kind of forward. And she also says this: parenting will trigger and awaken those unresolved needs and hurts in your life. When that happens, you will see, feel, and reason much like a child. And so brings up great questions of like what are some maybe some unresolved issues from your childhood that you're still processing and dealing with, and when in your parenting do you find you're acting more like a child or a teenager than an adult. And so a lot of this is just kind of cutting through, and it is a hard chapter to read, or at least the first part, because it is such a challenge, kind of to who we are and how we kind of operate. And so it's just a really kind of tough read. And so she breaks down these different parenting styles, that these five styles: the Peter Pan parent, the hovering parent, the hipster parent, the second chance parent, and then the pain-free parent. And so we'll talk a little bit about each one of these. And the first one is the Peter Pan parent. And the Peter Pan parent can look courageous when he or she takes risk and involves the children in wild adventures. But risk taking, and this is so important, risk taking and courage are not synonymous. If you lean towards a Peter Pan style of parenting, your child needs you to have the courage to be an adult parent rather than just a playmate. And I see that with myself a lot, especially working in youth ministry of when are those times where I am, being Peter Pan and just, but then when are those moments that I really need to kind of take more of a stance and more control. And so, kind of moving that into a parenting style of when is, kind of jokes and laughter and those kind of things, when do those need to kind of take a back seat, and maturity and being, more of a grown up kind of take into that one. And the hovering parent, and the hovering parent, is this one that is going about again in that fear mentality of the fearfulness of maybe what happens whenever you were a child or whenever your spouse was a child. And so going out of the fear instead of letting your child grow to be who God called them to be and who God is working on them to be. And so that hovering parent is more of, kind of going into control mode than actually letting the child kind of continue and prosper. And the hipster parent is insecure, so continues to in a certain way, and a little bit more insecure with in those behaviors, which then would bring about more narcissism that kind of comes up into those things. And so that was really within the hipster parent, and the image that you have is your highest priority. And so if your image is more important than, your actual parenting style, how much are you actually missing out? And the second chance parent is interdependent. And she writes this: the parent unknowingly sees their child as an extension of their own. Their identities are intertwined. One cannot exist without the other. And so, how much of your life is controlled by what your child is doing, and where is your sense of self that kind of comes up into that? And I thought that was a really good um, way of looking at some things. And so then the last one is the pain-free parent, and is lifeless. The pain-free parent has experienced profound pain at some point in their childhood. They are hurt in a way that longs to never hurt again. And so there's, a lot of, those kind of things that come up of, abuse and things that are unsettled and unpassable, in some stretch. And so she puts this Anne Lamott quote in that I really enjoyed. In her book Plan B, Anne Lamott wrote, "My friend Mark, who works in the church youth groups, reminded me recently that my teenage son Sam doesn't need me to correct his feelings. He needs me to listen, to be clear and fair and parental. But most of all, he needs me to be alive in the way that makes him feel he will be able to bear adulthood because he is terrified of death, and that includes growing up to be one that is stressed out, gray-faced adults he sees rushing around them." And so, that one kind of hit a pretty close to home for me of being able to, yes, I want the children and teenagers that are in my Christian education program to come out with this proficient scriptural knowledge, but how much of it am I missing if I am trying to get them to fit a mold that I have created instead of listening to them and creating the mold kind of around them. And so how often we as parents say, like, this is what the ideal of our child should look like and be like, and so they need to fit this certain mold instead of letting the creativity that is within each one of our children kind of prosper. And so that's chapter 3.